Good morning, everybody. Welcome from Montclair. 5 long weeks. You know, this is a black hole day, by the way. And let's do some preambles and then I'll start the rambling through stories. So, the preambles are if you have any accumulated questions from the last 5 weeks, you can ask them anytime during the session. Secondly, for those of you who just got up and didn't look at your email, I sent a film clip, a video clip, very short, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Thirdly, by the end of this session, you will have a much deeper understanding of black holes. Oh, wait a minute. I don't think I said that correctly. You will have a much deeper understanding of the black hole. All right. So now it's time for me to start the ramblings. And so compared to previous trips, this one we felt more than ever tired as we went through all the things we had to do. And I think we yearned to be back here as the trip came to a close. And normally that's not the case. But I think what's happened is all of you are so beautiful and we miss seeing you all the time that, 5 weeks of absence from your brilliant commentaries and observations, we were just anxious to get back. The anxiousness was really there. Lots of things happened on this trip that were unexpected. Hey, but that's the definition of a trip, right? You go on a trip, unexpected things. The number one take back from this trip was global warming's no joke. And global warming, in some ways, feels misnamed. Although, of course, the temperature of the Earth is gradually rising. What we experienced were 3 snowstorms in Japan. In the 12 days we were there, 3 snowstorms, one of which shut down virtually the entire railway system. Everybody in Japan said, oh, yeah, this is very unusual. In China, continuing global warming, blank being cold, except for Beijing. Beijing was interesting. We get in the airplane in Dongjing, take off thinking, okay, now we're going to real cold because normally in March, Beijing at its daytime high occasionally can get to 60, but it's usually more like 45, 46, 47, 48. Usually at nighttime, 28, 27, 26. And so we're thinking, okay, let's wear our warm clothes. Come sailing into Beijing, 90 degrees. Now, talk about global warming. This was the other extreme. But the good news for us is we stayed there only 4 hours in a layover and then headed to Kunming where things were much more livable. What else did we discover which affected all of you and our ability to reach out to you? As soon as we got on the plane to Beijing, we're kind of excited. We're summarizing what happened in Japan. We're getting ready to send pictures of Mount Fuji because we flew over it as we were leaving. We had other pictures of snow everywhere and us looking like we're lost and so forth. And we get to the Beijing airport, and normally we're so well prepared that any wall is not unscalable. What a surprise. Coming to Beijing, I can't get anywhere near my Gmail. So, what this meant was 18 consecutive days without being able to enter my Gmail. Very ugly. I have a backup mail service connected with Microsoft, but I had just gotten a message that it was under attack, hack attack. Of course, messaging was out of the question because that's not permitted in China. And many of you don't have WeChat. So all of a sudden, we were feeling very isolated as soon as we got to Beijing. And we were also feeling, oh, if this is going to be long term, this is not going to be easy for us to do all the things that we need to do with the business. We found some workarounds. The most emergency things that we need to get done, we got done. Everybody was helpful here who we communicated with, but this was a new experience for us. I think in all the years that we've gone, I've always had a workaround. This year, my planning was inadequate. I didn't have the right workaround. That won't happen again because it's really disastrous for us to be away from the organ which runs our business in our absence. So that was the first surprise. Japan was successful, so was Beijing, in spite of all the variety of weather-related challenges. So in Japan, the weather just actually disrupted our ability to get to meetings. It disrupted other people's ability to get to meetings. And therefore, we had to do a lot of shifting, and everybody was cooperative. Everybody's in a good mood. We accomplished a lot. In fact, we accomplished essentially everything we needed to accomplish in Japan. Let's fast forward to China. How did we do in China? Well, again, disruption with weather. And the heat wasn't the issue, it was the cold, because many of you remember that we had an invitation from the government, local government, to attend an opening ceremony for picking green tea. And we were all set to go, but there was never a set date because they're waiting and waiting and waiting until the weather is adequate. Well, wait a minute. What does that mean? Weather is adequate. So you go someplace so you don't have to use an umbrella, or you go someplace so that maybe you don't have to wear so many clothes. What does weather is adequate mean? Let me, in terms of tea lingo, get you completely tuned in to what that means. We eventually went to that area, which is close to the Yellow Mountains, without an invitation, without a formal invitation, because of the following circumstances. It actually snowed in March, and it snowed around March 24th or 25th. Now, on the surface, and this was a California boy, pre actually having to live in Northeast China, I used to love snow. Yeah. But my definition of snow was few snowflakes in the morning. You get a little pasting of snow on the ground up at Mount Diablo or Mount Tam. By noon, it's all gone. Ah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. That's not the snow that we're talking about. They had pictures of it piled on the tea bushes, accumulated from the snow itself, accumulating on the tea bushes. When snow is like that, it doesn't kill the tea bushes, but nothing grows. And subsequently, of course, it melted within a day or so. But the issue was that when we finally got up there, it was still cold, too cold for the plant to believe, oh, I should put out buds so that we can have real spring pick. You know, my lunar calendar in my plant memory says this is the time to put out buds, but it's just too cold. So we went up to these fields, and sure enough, we walked field through field, and There are literally no buds. We're there on March 29th or something. And we're walking around and nothing. And then finally we got to a couple bushes that had buds. It's really interesting when you're in the tea business, when you have learned all the things you've learned here at Sophie's, you would know, oh, where's the buds? You know, I'm here during spring. I want those buds. And when you're looking and all you see are dried up centers of where buds would be coming out, and the leaves look healthy enough, but there's no bud support. Then when all of a sudden you walk to a place and there are buds, you know instantly what that means. That somehow the angle of the sun was just right on those 3 or 4 tea bushes, and their internal clock said, oh, it's springtime. Let's put out the buds. And it was really, really striking as we were walking through tea fields. And these were tea fields that were planted over the entirety of a mountain. So we were walking in mountains. And this is something that was the strongest firsthand evidence I think Bijou and I have ever experienced together walking in a situation like this late in March, because I don't think we've ever been in a green tea area this late in March and not had a preponderance of buds. How else did this express itself? When we were in Yunnan, there were fewer buds on the trees than we expected. So that short video clip, there's 2 reasons that I appended that for you to see. And one reason is you see me fumbling around with a tree and trying to find buds. Oh yeah, there's some buds there. And the temperature there wasn't way cold, but it was cooler than normal. And the tree is very sensitive to the temperature before it starts putting out buds. The other reason I wanted you to see that is this was a research institute, and they wanted me to do some short clips about the trees because they've seen our broadcast before and they know that we know how to present interestingly in English. So impromptu, I had no idea, walk out to the field and the head of the institute's accompanying us and showing us this situation and that situation. And this is about, I want to say 10 miles from the border of Burma. It's not far from the border of Burma, maybe 15 miles from the border of Burma. So it's close. And he says, oh, can you do an introduction in English? And I said, well, of course I can do an introduction, but you didn't warn me. That means I might make up stuff. He said, that doesn't matter. Just make up true stuff. And I said, okay, I can do that. And so that was why I sent you that clip, just to show you the level of appreciation on both sides for each side's ability. So those are some of the astounding things that happen. But does it get better? Oh, it absolutely gets better. Both Bijou and I had the thrill of a lifetime. Not only were we at a research institute, and that means you've got scientists, and scientists talking big words all the time, and they're talking them in Chinese too. That's a little complicated sometimes. But we were also invited to an agricultural university in Anhui. In fact, the agricultural university in Anhui. And we were invited to the tea specialty section. Now, that doesn't sound very special until you hear the following statement. The tea specialty section in China is not like the tea specialty section up at UC Davis. I'm not dissing UC Davis because it's great that they have a tea department there. It's really fabulous. But the tea section at Anhui Agriculture University is 5 buildings, 5 entire buildings, machinery, equipment, research equipment throughout the buildings, scientists. It was really a thrill, and we got to spend almost all day there. We had lunch with, they have about, I think, what did they tell us? I think about 800 scientists working there and teaching there and doing research there. And it was just a remarkable opportunity to advance our education. Everywhere we went, because things were unexpected and schedules changed in our favor. We got to visit a gentleman who's been researching pu'er, that is a fully fermented black tea, for 6 or 7 years. And this guy has come up with some understandings about the development of pu'er that we had never heard before. This was totally exciting. And he shared them with us as we were sitting in his lab with other students. And actually, he's taken this research out into a small company. So this was what our trip was about. We learned and learned and learned, and were exposed to new things that totally unexpected. We did go back and see old friends. There is, how do I want to put this? The old friends that we saw in China did not refer all that much to anything going on beyond their area. However, that being said, everybody knows that there's stuff going on internationally. And so everything that we're planning moving forward is to continue to be in this business, no matter what the business environment is. The current business environment, and we just saw this described in a magazine which caters to tea and coffee in the US. The current business environment, they did some numbers. They rolled out the numbers based on the projections for what the cost of everything would be to increase. And they rolled out what they thought the number of businesses that would decline or go away. And their estimate was at least 50% in the US. That's a huge, astounding number. It's not astounding to me because it's hard to do this business, but factually, when you think about all the pressures on pricing and how to get all of that taken care of, this is a truly difficult environment. Nonetheless, Biju and I remain optimistic. And all the producers we're working with in China also remain optimistic. We will figure out how to continue to move forward. And actually, during this trip, we put together the plans to move forward. We know that those plans were put together before some of the tumult that's occurred. And therefore, we're gonna all have to relook at those plans very carefully, but we're excited and optimistic because everything goes in waves, doesn't it? You know, one day the market's high, the next day it's in a trough. This is the way business is, right? However, this is not how business is at Sophie's, as all of you know. At Sophie's, it never falls into a trough. It's always on a high. And that's all because of you. Let's talk about black hole, because I think I've rambled enough. Yeah, I've rambled enough. Black hole, this is the 6th in a 6 T series, black hole. And so you had earth spirit, celestial offering, ascending, or a neutron star, and dark matter. And all of those have characteristics to them. All of them are different from black hole. How are they different? Well, the number one thing, what really pulls earth spirit, dark matter, and black hole away from everywhere is that they're done on a more local production. They're done where they're picked, which means that they're not using big company techniques. They're not using big company starters. See, most of the fully fermented tea uses a predictable set of starters. They're not all, in quotes, the same, but they're all relatively within a range. And therefore, you get a relatively close flavor profile. And the technique is, in quotes, standardized. So as soon as you have large scale standardization, you get a similar, in quotes, flavor profile. Now, of course, something can be a little cleaner, something can be a little less earthy, but you don't get such a wide range usually that right away you say, okay, there's a trick point. But when you look at earth spirit, dark matter, and black hole, it's okay. I don't get this. Why isn't everybody producing fully fermented teas just like this? And it comes down to custom and cost. As soon as, like with dark matter, you add more buds into the mix, you've increased your cost. Now, because you're an artisan as a grower and you like the flavor, cost be damned, right? And instead, you say, my customers already know I'm a custom person and they're going to pay the extra freight. And they do. With earth spirit, it's tied to the local indigenous culture. They don't ship that tea to the big plants. By the way, let's put some context and perspective. The biggest plants in Munghai, which is where most of the fermented tea is produced, they produce somewhere in the region of 30 to 50,000 tons annually. It's a lot of tea. And therefore, in order to do that, can they be doing a lot of things which have uniqueness to them and customization to them and so forth? Answer is no. You produce at that level when you have equipment that fills rooms and rooms and rooms and rooms. It's automated, so to speak, for the most part, although you can never fully automate, but it's mostly automated. Let's put this even more clearly to you. It's 85% automated. So essentially, once you get the unfinished or the 70% tea, then essentially everything is done through measurement, through timing, through temperature, and it's done over and over again until it's finished. Simple as that. But when you're in the farm, that's not what you're doing. You're not working with that equipment. If you looked at the equipment they use to do earth spirit, it's laughable in comparison. But it's also much more custom. So at the distinguishing steps, the farmer is actually they're not just measuring. They're smelling, they're feeling, they're saying, I want this to be a little longer, I want this to be a little shorter, I want the temperature to be a little bit more humid, or I want the starter to be a little bit different. and I'm not going to use a traditional starter. So that's a big difference. That's an enormous difference from the big factories. And so that's what you tasted in Earth, Spirit, and Dark Matter. Black Hole is even more so. Black Hole is from the Isla Mountains. When we stumbled upon this, and literally we stumbled upon it because this was in a particular farmer's collection, and we didn't know, and they didn't know what we were really looking for. They just were excited that we were at their farm looking at stuff, and we were excited that, gosh, you got ancient tree stuff. How do we understand this? And gosh, you've done it so many different ways, and you've done it over the years, and you have some years of this in your warehouse. Where do we start? And so we can't use some normal parameters when we're working with newer farmers. Normally with the farmers that we work with over a long time, we say, okay, you know our flavor profiles, you know what we've been purchasing. What we would like is something that's not that flavor profile, but you also know that from our perspective, our customers expect unusual and great together. And if it's not that, don't even show it to us. I don't care that maybe there's other indigenous peoples who like it, but it still doesn't fit that unusual and great. I don't care. I want the unusual and great. And that's how we found this, because over a period of time, the farmer said, well, I have about 50 things for you to try. I said, we have time for about 5 or 6 things. And they said, okay, let me think about it. And they still got out 30 or 40 things. And then as we worked with them to try and understand, we stumbled across Black Hole. And in the beginning, I almost rejected even trying Black Hole, because it's like, are you kidding me? Another fully fermented tea with ancient tree material? And they're doing red tea. And usually I find there's more interesting variation with the red tea, but they say, oh, you got to try this one. Okay, you got to try means we try. We tried this, and we knew instantly, okay, since you haven't done this in a big production facility, and since you did it according to local preferences, according to local custom, which we didn't quite understand until we tasted it, this is really different. Black Hole, from our perspective, we have never, even when we've been guests in special situations and had stuff rolled out, oh yeah, this stuff is $100,000. Hey, and we've tasted, yeah, that's good, that's good. We've never had anything like Black Hole. And that's why so many people who don't particularly like fully fermented teas end up loving this thing, because it doesn't have that, in quote, earthiness or soilness to it. It is really about depth. It is really about fullness in the mouth, and just a very pleasant flavor that doesn't really remind you of the earth, except that this thing is totally black in color. All right. So with that as a lead in, you're thirsty. I know you're thirsty. Oh, plus you have 5 weeks of thirst built up. Well, let me ask the tea master to do an extraordinary job of presenting Black Hole to help relieve the thirst. And it is my great pleasure to bring Biju, Tea Master, to work with Black Hole with you.
Hi everyone, good morning. Yeah, so just talk to you about yeah, we went to Japan and China too. Okay, we do black hole. So this is the fermented tea.
So when you look at this tea, unlike Earth Spirit, where you could tell right away, hey, there's something happening. These leaves are bigger. You look at this, it seems innocuous. That's just an appearance. One of the things I forgot to mention to you in the lead up to this is the only reason that we actually considered this is because one of the same farmers who does ancient woodland also does black hole. And so they already had some credibility, although again, when I said, is it better than ancient woodland? They said it's different, but it's every bit as good. It's like, okay, well, we'll go ahead and try it. So temperature is all 200 degree. It's 8 grams. We rinse. So this 200 degrees is different than the 200 degrees for the cliff teas, isn't it? Because you notice we do this uncovered. Timing is 4 minutes. Thank you. Yes, I'm obviously out of practice since everybody was serving me tea and they were serving it according to their own standards. And yes, it's a 4-minute steep. There's actually 8 grams in your package. The 200 degree difference here is this is uncovered. So it isn't that fully fermented needs continually constant temperature. What's odd about this is it's more tied up with the time. Now, obviously you can't do 175 degrees because you won't get the result you're looking for. It does have to start out hot, but it doesn't have to be, in fact, it shouldn't be covered. In effect, if you cover it, if you can imagine this, the earthiness in some ways, any earthiness there is becomes trapped in there and you can kind of taste it in a different way. And that's not what you want. You want the cleanliness, you want the freshness, and you want the full appeal of that flavor to come through. And that's why you leave it uncovered. As usual, you don't discard the rinse until you're ready to transfer, because you kind of heat the cup with the rinse and flavor the cup, then you discard it, and then you're going to strain it in. So, as I mentioned just a second ago, the ancient woodland, so those of you who've had ancient woodland, remember what it looks like. You got twigs, you got all sorts of gnarly leaves in it. You have things that almost look like little sticks of wood. They're not. They're really part of the pit. And it just looks wild. And the flavor and the smell are more of mushrooms and woodsiness than they are what you're used to for fully fermented tea. And it just blows you away because it gives you a sense of range. This enhances that sense of range because this is more uniformly made, more uniformly made. Okay, let me back up because it's still very custom, but by the uniformity, I mean the leaves all are about the same. There's no oddities, there's no twigs in this. This is a completely different pick in terms of making that uniform. What is not uniform is how they actually process it. And that has more quirks in it. And therefore, that's why you get this highly unusual flavor for this, and a flavor that you don't see in any of the others. The closest of all the others that you tasted during these 5 weeks would be Earth Spirit, but Earth Spirit just doesn't have the depth that you'll see in this shortly. We went back to that farm this year. The farmer tempted us with numerous things. We are undecided. And right now, given the tumult in the market, we have to consider that as we move forward. And this is going to be a tricky balance because when you have this much frothiness going on in the market, and it's artificial, actually, then that pulls out speculators. In other words, no speculator is going to come into this market, except probably us. We're not speculators. We're more trying to make sure that we have an even flow of the best possible teas. All right, so the color is the first thing. This thing is dark. Oh, very dark. Deep, very deep. Take a 200-degree inhalation. You know you're in the fermented tea territory, but you also think to yourself, is this really fermented tea? And by the way, as we move through this, I'm going to tell you some more stuff about change within the tea industry, debated change within the tea industry in China. All right, so you go through the same usual quality assessments. You look for where it is drying in the mouth. You look for aftertaste. You look for energetics. You're used to all of those things. I'm going to have her just go ahead and brew up with you now, and then we'll talk more about this. Because we have nobody new on the cast today. Degree water is what she's using. There's just a nice rhythm to what she's doing. Yours is a bag labeled number 3 black hole. Put it in the cup, the heated cup. Set your timer for 4 minutes.
Jennifer asked, so I'm curious why there's no rinse on this tea?
There was a rinse.
I think Jen may have perhaps joined after that or missed the rinse. So yes.
There is a rinse.
the rinse.
You
and
see
we're
that?
watching it now.
You're watching it right now.
You're asked, is it only the British who rinse as opposed to those who are in China?
Now, that's a great question. Complicated question, actually. So Peter alludes to the fact that the British were the ones who really thought that rinse was important. The Chinese, because they understand the science of this, really understand that rinse per se is not important because the heat that's generated during the processing, when it's done correctly, is enough to kill any of the dangerous bacteria that could be in here. However, there's several ifs here, aren't there? One is it done properly? Now, if it's at the big plants, because it's standardized now, it is. So you shouldn't be doing a rinse, except for one other thing. If it is not ancient tree, if it's plantation tea, in other words, clonal tea, monoclonal tea, some of that is sprayed. Not what we have here, but in other situations, and they know this in China. So if they're in the farm area, they know whether it's been sprayed or not, and that will determine, oh no, I don't need to rinse. If you don't know origin, then it's really important to rinse regardless. Even if somebody says, no, you don't need to rinse. How do you know? Well, I've been to the fields. That's different. How do you know? Oh, I don't see anybody else doing it. You better rinse. Because some of the monoclonal is sprayed. If somebody says, oh, I know because it's ancient tree, that would be right. Ancient tree is not sprayed. You would never spray an ancient tree. And by the way, and I'll catch this question in a second. In the Ilau Mountains, there are about 100,000 acres of land where there are ancient trees. The count, the current count is about 1,000 ancient trees. So remembering that ancient is counted as 1,000 years old. Question.
How long is the rinse? Did not see that in the email instruction.
Rinse properly should be, well, okay. All right, so let's back up. If you didn't rinse this, it wouldn't be a disaster. We rinse it for 10 seconds, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, 10 seconds. But we rinse it just because you see everybody else rinsing, but we know that this doesn't need to be rinsed, but we still, okay, they say it might have this or that, but we know why it doesn't have this or that, but we still follow so that you get in good habits. Yes.
Peter asked, when did rinsing come into fashion? Was it with factory tea production?
Another insightful question. Yes. So rinsing came into fashion, particularly after 1973, because 1973 in China, they patented this composting process. Nobody really understood, well, what's the safety level? At the time, the factories were not actually fully fermenting, which was interesting. And they had a reason. And you had skilled people who could follow that reason and create a wonderful product. But then, as those people retired, in order to avoid problems, eventually they turn to, well, let's rinse for safety purposes until we understand the full range of safety considerations. So I want to say by the mid 1980s, most of the older producers were gone. You had younger people, and it was more of a safety precaution. And as it was a safety precaution, it became custom. And it became real custom outside of Yunnan, because in Yunnan, they realized, oh, we've never had anybody sick from this before. We don't need to do that. But outside, that was another issue. And what's the other main issue outside? You have this practice in Canton Province, which led to all this moldy tea, which was said to be really great. But in fact, it was just moldy tea because of the storage. And this was, from a culture perspective, what they wanted. But that also introduced potential problems, safety problems. So stuff that's stored what we would consider improperly in too humid a condition can have mold and other organisms which could be dangerous. So again, in the absence of absolutely knowing origin, just rinse. In the case of our teas, we're just saying an example for you. If we were sitting with the farmer, in fact, not if we were, when we sat with the farmer this time, the farmer at no time rinsed. Every tea that they introduced to us, oh, here it is. And were we afraid? As a digression here, I am going to tell you 1 minute during the trip when I had a brief moment of fear. Normally, it's hard for me to be fearful. And this moment of fear, and I apologize for the digression during this part of the discussion, this moment of fear actually occurred in Japan, because we're at a meal, and of course, this is a meal that somebody, oh, I know, this was where we stayed provided dinner, and they never, everything was in if it had been in kanji, I would have recognized, but it was in hiragana and katakana, and these are scripts that I've forgotten how to read. Long time ago, I used to know how to read that stuff. I've forgotten everything. And so, oh, here's what you're having for dinner. And there'd be a list of 18 things because, little tiny plates. But my ear is aware of when people are speaking Japanese and they tell you blah, 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 and then key words jump out. And they said fugu. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, here's an opportunity for me to die today. And I didn't tell the tea master because tea master was in another mood. And so I thought, if this is going to not be done properly, that's going to be an end of Sophie's. But it's almost unlikely. I mean, who ever makes a mistake in preparing that? You only ever read about those mistakes once a year or so. And so I was astounded when they served this place plate of food. But I steel myself and ate it with enthusiasm, because I knew if I ate with enthusiasm, that would mitigate any potential mistake that would be made with that. Fortunately, no mistake was made, and here I am today, and here's the tea master did. Sorry for that digression. I just couldn't help myself. Yes, fear. Go ahead.
Wow. Okay. Back on this tea, Peter shares, I ain't rinsing Sophie's tea, unquote, quote unquote. Okay.
Yep, well, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And Peter has an observation on this tea.
Go ahead. Mhm.
So much detail to
Mm.
this tea, more on each, and I don't quite see that word, but other fermented teas in comparison seem much more homogeneous.
Oh, now that's really a great and interesting observation. Okay, and here at Sophie's, this is exactly why you get exposed to this, because so many of the other fully fermented, the distinctions are so small that they seem homogeneous, and that they seem like, oh, well, this is, I can tell that this is all very close to one another. And to me, it's all about Earth, or all about this. Whereas that's not the case with this. And this is what captured us immediately. And just with ancient, as with ancient woman, it captured us immediately because it is not the same. And you just won't find this. We have drunk tea all over China. And people, because of our reputation, try and show off the best and most interesting things. And nothing has quite in the fermented tea been as immediately interesting and different as this. Yes.
Rob shares, the warm leaves have hints of ocean, wood, malt, and tobacco.
Okay. Ocean, wood, malt, and tobacco. Did you hear that? Did you hear anything about dirt, old socks, tilled land? No. And that's what makes this so special, because there are all those other flavors and they're instantly accessible for a Western audience. And that's why I know people who've been out in the public and gone to Chinese restaurants and had, fermented tea there. Oh, I hate this stuff because it's only earthy or this. They think that all of it is going to be that way. And then they tried this. You're lying to me. This isn't fermented. This isn't earthy. What's wrong? You're trying to trick me. No, this is the range that this tea can be. Yes.
Rob adds, the tea water is round and it has a hint of caramel sweetness.
Love this comment. So, excuse me. Rob opens with what the smell of the leaves was, and then he goes to the flavor. And the first thing he says is not sweet. The first thing he says is round. And everybody who has this tea and takes the time says, oh my gosh, this is round, it's smooth, it's fresh, not fresh as much as clean. And then they veer off into various flavors, hints of sweetness. You can't get a hint of sweetness unless you start off with round and clean. The clean is the round and clean are the most important things out of this, because they open the path for you to see everything in the tea. Yes.
Jennifer shares, the energetics are grounding and cleansing.
We're already in energetics. I love it. Grounding and cleansing. Are they ever? Whenever I have made a serious mistake and upset the tea master, I think of this tea right away. How do I get her back on that groundedness? Let's do some black hole. And it's just that. It's that sense of, if you were distracted or your stomach's a little upset, you do this, and all of a sudden it's not. Yeah.
Peter says, you must drink it a lot.
Fortunately, the tea master's not paying attention. While she's not paying attention, I will say, yeah, I do drink a lot when she's not paying attention. Because actually, I'm forbidden to touch this stuff until she says it's okay. that doesn't mean that some doesn't disappear on the side. Okay. This is really, from our perspective, the penultimate in terms of fermented tea. And like I said, we learned a lot during this trip, including there's a new debate. And I don't want you to make any changes yet because we haven't determined where we stand on this debate. But there is this debate about yellow tea and fermented tea and how yellow tea may not or may be closer to fermented tea than other teas. I understand, and the whole issue is blindsided. So we have a tea here called blindsided. And when we got it, it was classed as green tea. Now there is the sense that maybe it should be classed as yellow tea. And then that's led to the sense that maybe it should have, and maybe yellow tea in general should be somehow labeled fermented. This is a complicated debate. You can't do anything except be aware, because right now we don't have enough information for us to come down on one side or the other. We always knew that blindsided was difficult. A great tasting tea, but it's just a difficult to categorize tea. And as we thought more about it this time with tea scientists, we understand why they're having this dance. Go ahead.
Rob shares. I get a complex sensation of taste and astringency on my tongue. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's both a feeling and a taste.
This is a great comment because so many of the teas, especially less processed, have more astringency right away. And this one doesn't. Though there's astringency there, but it's an afterthought almost. The taste, the roundness, I said that wrong order. The roundness, the taste, and then, oh yeah, afterthought. There is astringency. That's really going on with this tea. So this fermented behaves that way, and good observation.
Jennifer asks, any hints regarding unusual and specialties you found during the trip?
Well, the reason that I want to be careful about this, we found plenty of very special things. And now, again, with this tumult, we don't know what we're going to do. Because at some point, if I say $2 million per cup instead of $1 million, you're probably going to say to me, you know, that's a little bit too much inflation all at once. And so, yeah, we found so many exciting things, especially in the green tea area. We found some very exciting things, but I hesitate to say anything because they're not in our hands yet. And I just don't know. And there's a bunch of strategic things we have to think about during this period. So yes, we were exposed to a lot of different things. No, we haven't made decisions yet on what we're going to bring back. But great question. Yes. Okay. So for those of you who are wondering what the future weeks are going to bring, oh, by luck, we're entering, you know, as I'm thinking about the lunar period, we're entering a cliff tea lunar period. This sounds like fun to me. Next week, we're going to do ghostly. We're going to follow it up with unicorn. Oh, and if we have unicorn, what should follow unicorn? There should be a yearning. That sounds good to me, but maybe there's more. What about a huntress in week 4? Harbinger in week 5? And, to wrap it up, let's be placid. 6 weeks of Cliff Teas is where we're going next. We missed you. We missed you a lot. We really appreciate all of you. You are the ones who stimulate us to make these trips. These trips are not easy, but they're fun coming back and reporting on. They're very fun as we're exploring the teas and talking to the farmers, because we know we're going to be able to share information, share tastes, share experiences with all of you. Really appreciate your support, really appreciate your deep grasp of the teas. It's just fun to be in this journey. Yes.
Sharing back, Peter says, this has been a fantastic series for me to get to understand fermented teas better and garner a better affinity for them. And there was a Me Too by Stacy. Jen shared how much she missed you and Babe, Biju, and the rest of the crew, also a Me Too on that. So welcome back.
Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next week. You have one responsibility this week. Stay healthy. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Take care now. Bye-bye.